Hey, I'm Scotty T from Your Comedy Minute. I have a very, very special guest today. Ginny Sikes is with me. Ginny is a comedian, a journalist, an author, and I always get a little giddy because this lady did it for real. And I'm just a Ginny, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
When people hear, they'll understand what I'm talking about.
They
You
go,
you've done a lot of stuff.
yeah, I've had a lot of pivots in my life.
Well, let's start with you're in California now,
Correct.
but I don't think you were born and raised there.
No, I was born in Wisconsin,
Oh,
uh,
wow. Okay.
which is mainly known for the dairy industry.
The Packers.
We have a lot of meat eaters too, though.
Yeah. Cheeseheads
Yeah,
and meat.
Jeffrey Dahmer and Ed Gein.
Yeah.
Yes,
Well, yeah, we'll get into all that because you've done a lot of dark stuff. But if I'm right now, again, I'm not sure, but you started at Tiger Beat magazine.
yeah, correct. I was raised in Wisconsin and then went to school in Missouri. Then I moved to LA for 2 years.
Okay.
And my first job was at Tiger Beat, which you don't need a
Tell the
degree.
people because I know I'm old enough what
Right.
Tiger Beat magazine is or was.
Yeah. So Tiger Beat was a magazine for basically tween girls and
Yep.
secretly gay boys. And it featured like all your teen idols. You
Sean
had,
Cassidy and all the, yeah, I
yeah,
remember it.
and they would have pullouts, that you could hang
Yep.
on your wall. And it was all kind of like to give hope to give these kids that they could one day win the love of their teenage love. I mean, we'd have headlines like, David Cassidy doesn't care if you're beautiful. He he just wants a girl who will make him laugh.
All right, well, let's keep moving. We got so much to cover. You got your master's degree
Oh,
from
wait,
Columbia
did I
University in
tell you?
journalism.
Oh,
No, well, the reason I wanted to move ahead is
yeah.
because you went from Tiger Beat magazine to some huge magazines.
Well, I, I just have to share with you, and you may know this, but when I was at Tiger Beat, I met this woman who was an editor, and she was very
Okay.
virginal and sweet. And she would get crushes, like these kind of stocky crushes on people, but it'd be like Fred Astaire or Johnny Mathis. But then she got a crush on the Night Stalker, Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker.
Okay.
And she wrote him in prison and married him. And I thought, here's this woman giving advice to these little girls, like,
And she just married the Night Stalker.
and she moved to San Quentin and lived in a boat so she could
Are
see.
you serious?
Yeah. And because I think a lot about this, I was thinking, why would anybody marry somebody in prison? But
Right.
I think it's control. Like you see him when you
Yeah.
want to. He
You
he
could just
can't.
walk away.
Yeah.
Get
You don't have
pissed
to have
off. I'll
sex with
see you.
him. Yeah.
See you next month, asshole.
Right, exactly. So yes, I went to, well, that was one of the reasons I went to grad school because I was thinking, I had had this weird first job, which I loved. I absolutely loved it. But I thought if
Yeah,
I got my
Tiger
master's,
Beat was huge. Tiger, because
yeah.
you don't know, we never met, but I worked in the music business and I remember Tiger Beat magazine.
Well, it's funny. I actually moved to LA to be in the music business, but I
Okay.
wanted to do like punk stuff. And I
Okay.
also covered soap operas, but I moved to New York for legitimacy. I thought, oh, I better,
Okay.
so somebody would take me seriously.
Well, and I'm going to move us ahead just because I was so blown
Sure.
away, and I hope I'm right about this. But you not only graduated from Columbia University, but then you worked at these major magazines, and you interviewed and with Harrison Ford and Nicolas Cage. And do
Yeah.
you have some other ones you want to mention? Because I was just like,
Jeremy
golly,
Jeremy Irons, Jeff Goldblum.
yeah.
Uh,
Do you see why I'm a little nervous? You interviewed these major people, and you got some hokey guy from Your Comedy Minute trying to interview you.
No, that's great. I
This
mean,
this
I'm sure
always
they
dawns on me, by the way. This always dawns on me about a half hour before the show. I go, I'm trying to interview a lady that's interviewed Harrison Ford.
Hey, believe me, I'm sure Harrison Ford thought I was this hokey lady interviewing him. I mean,
Oh, really?
yeah, like it's all, yeah,
Well,
yeah, it's all.
what was that like? In other words, because I've heard some horror stories about Harrison Ford. I heard he's not.
Well, it's interesting. What happened was, I got a call. I was the entertainment editor of this magazine called Mademoiselle, which was
I
very big,
remember.
but it no longer exists. And the publicist says something like, "Well, we want to offer you this big star, but we can't tell you who it is or where the interview will take place." And I was
Okay.
like, how am I supposed to make a decision on that? And typically, I would assign a writer to go, but because the circumstances were so odd, they sent me.
Yeah, they're a little. We're not going to tell you who it is, but it's a big star.
But by the time I got on the plane, I knew. And I remember I flew out. He lives in or lived in Jackson Hole.
Yeah, I
And
think he's still there.
and I remember the night I was there, I ate rattlesnake. I just thought, oh,
Right.
it was on the menu, so I thought, oh, I should do this. But when I
How was
met
it?
him,
How was it? I'm an idiot. How was it?
you know the answer.
No, I
It
don't.
you don't. It
I've never
tasted like
had it.
it tasted like chicken.
Yeah, that's okay. Okay. All
Because
right.
everything you fry, like
Yeah.
human meat probably tastes like chicken too. Uh,
Okay. I'm sorry. Keep going. Don't
so
mind
I met
me.
him and he was nice, but like they had a hotel meeting and I went in and sat
Yeah.
down with him.
Yeah.
And but he was very reserved and I don't think he was nervous, but he was just like he was sweating under the armpits, but anybody could be sweating. But of course, I wrote that in my story, and
Oh
um,
no.
and then his publicist blackballed me from, I mean, not very long, but from screenings and stuff. But I was just talking. He didn't really give that much, so the whole article was about
Yeah,
how
right,
I
right,
was
right.
called and
That's what I got. Well, who was one that you really had a good time with? Did you have a do you have
uh,
a favorite memory from some of the interviews you've done?
well, Nicolas Cage was a trip.
I'll
Um,
bet. I'll bet.
yeah, he was. We met at the this old time restaurant called Mussos and Franks in
Okay.
LA, and he was just like you're really cool, you're really cool. And he'd look at the salt shaker. This salt shaker's wow, this salt shaker's cool. And he I was very cocky back then, and I would just go through his wallet. His wallet was standing, and I was like looking through his stuff. And it turns out that he had a Burmese cat named Lewis, and I had a Burmese cat named Bob. And he was like, "Wow, like we have this connection. We both have Burmese cats." And so, I mean, he was fun, and we wound up. He
Oh my.
he
Oh my. Hi,
he
Daddy.
he took he drove his grandma's car, like there, and it was like this beat up car with a wheelchair, a disabled anyway, I went to his house and he had I mean, this is when he was really young. I think he did Vampire's Kiss. He lived in this is LA, and he lived in a place that was all covered with velvet, like heavy velvet drapes and stuff. He had a grand piano that he didn't play, and he had this huge giant bee that he had gotten from some old movie, like Invaders of, giant bees. And I remember he was saying that he didn't have a lot of money. And I said, well, sell the bee. So, but
Well, let's
he was
move on
very
because
fun.
we've got a lot to cover. I no, and you know, I hate to say it, but it reminds me. I met Joe Walsh,
Oh,
and
okay.
Joe Walsh was like, you know who Joe Walsh is
Yeah,
from
yeah.
England? Yeah, and he reminds me of like Nicolas Cage, where he was just like, "Yeah, bud, it was okay, all righty."
You know what he is? Well, at the time he seemed like a poor little rich boy, but I mean, I liked him very much, but he just
Yeah,
was
cool.
a
I like
trip.
Joe Walsh a lot. He was fun.
Yeah.
Well, let's move on because you went on to TV, and I just wrote down A&E, PBS, VH1, MTV, Netflix.
Yeah. I
They're
was
all amazing. The Netflix one alone, you did tell the people about that one.
so that was okay, so that was a project headed by Matt Groening, who
Right.
the Simpsons, and
Right.
Josh Weinstein, who was a early writer on The Simpsons, and it was called Disenchantment. It was
Yeah.
his, and so I wasn't a writer on it. I was on the production side, and I mainly got it because Josh Weinstein is an old friend of mine.
Okay.
We first worked together on Dennis Leary's first show, and
Dennis Leary. Did you
but
just think Dennis Leary?
yeah,
Dennis Leary. I do a Dennis Leary bit or two that I just love.
you
Dennis
on.
Leary is one of my favorite. Was one of my, and still around. One of my favorite comedians.
Yeah, he is he's brilliant. And not only just comedy. I mean, he's,
Oh
you
yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah.
yeah. The show was awful, but he wasn't. I mean, it was just, the mix of things. But everybody
Okay.
who was on that show went on to, write for Conan. Like all the writers went on to become
Okay.
writers. So yeah, I worked with on the Matt show, and then what happened was it went on hiatus, and we didn't know if it was going to be picked up, and that's when I started doing stand up, was during that
Okay.
time.
Yeah. Well, I didn't mean to run over because you had a lot to do with MTV. You saw some of your posts and VH1, and I mean, like I said, you've done. We could spend another 20 minutes talking about your accolades, but we finally got to comedy.
Yeah, well, I had no interest in doing comedy. I mean, I liked comedy and I liked hanging out with comedy writers, but I don't have any theater background or anything. And
Okay.
at that for most of my life, I couldn't stand talking in front of people.
I knew the answer, but when did you start doing comedy?
So I guess 2019, it was
Yeah, that's
right
right. So
before,
5, 6 years ago, right? Five
yeah,
5 years
right
ago,
before
right?
COVID,
Yeah.
which
And
is a
what
great.
was your first show like?
I think the first show is always the best, because
Was
it's
it
like
okay?
beginner's luck. I mean, I've
Was
seen
it okay?
people. And so many people have a great first show, and then you're chasing the dragon from then on. You're like,
Is
oh
that?
well, it's who's at your first show? Your friends, and everybody's excited
Okay, all
for
right.
you. Um,
Well, it's
but
funny though. I do a lot of these that a lot of people tell me their first show didn't go so good.
oh,
They were
interesting.
nervous and I've had some have accidents on the stage and you know,
Well, shortly after that, I mean, I like within the year, I bombed for the first time. And
okay.
what was interesting about that was um,
Well,
because I
can
had,
I stop you for a second? Because that ties into favorite show and least favorite show. Because I think you're going to tell me about your least favorite show, but do your favorite show first. What was your favorite show so far? Your first one?
no, no.
Okay. What's your favorite show so far?
Oh gosh, there were a couple of them. I
You can
did
do
the
a couple of them.
improv.
You can do a
I
couple.
did
I won't be mad at you.
I did the improv as the opener. That's the lowest level
I,
comic on the lineup.
I know what the opener is.
Yeah. And,
I know
and
what the opener is.
well, I just wanted to emphasize the lowest level.
Yeah, yeah. I do. Do it again for the people,
It's
because
really
that's where
low.
you're at now. You're at the lowest end of the
They're
podcast
still
world.
they're still seating people. People are giving their drink order while you're trying to tell jokes.
Okay.
But uh and Pete Holmes was on the lineup.
Pete
And
Holmes, right?
so I did my set and the crowd listened and I got a really nice reaction. And
Yeah.
when I walked off, the producer said Pete Holmes was laughing during your set. Now, Pete Holmes admits he's an easy laugh, like he's a
Well,
warm. And
don't
then
take
he
away.
came
I'm
up
sure
to
you were
me.
great.
Yeah, he
Yeah,
came up.
you've opened for some other big stars too. Daryl Hammond from Saturday. Is Daryl Hammond from Saturday Night Live? Is that right?
Yeah, he plays a lot out here. And
I
so
like him a lot. I've always liked him.
have you seen the documentary on him?
No, I haven't, but I'll have to watch it. I really like him.
He's got an
You know what?
intense,
I may have seen part of it now that you mention it.
it still haunts him, like
Yeah.
I see him a lot. So, but he
Okay.
went through the ringer.
Well, let's try and get him on my little dog and pony show here if you can help me out.
Okay. Have
I would
you
love to have him on. I'll do anything to get people on here.
Okay,
And
I can try,
then they can see how
definitely.
bad I interview, how bad I interview him. You can laugh at it. Well, let's keep going because we got a few more before. Well, we got into comedy a little bit, but I don't want to miss only because I know this. You wrote a book called Eight Ball Chicks. Eight Ball
Yeah,
Chicks.
yeah.
Now, a lot of people, I shouldn't say a lot, some people might not know what an eight ball is.
Right, right. It's a cocaine, a reference to cocaine, but also it's kind of got a double meaning because if you're behind the eight ball, it's
Okay.
fast efficient
Okay.
to
All
be.
right. Yeah, I've had an eight ball or two.
Well, good.
my my favorite story is we get an eight ball for the weekend, and by Friday evening we were trying to get another eight ball.
Yeah, I never was a big Coke person, but
No, I that was back in the day.
right, right. Yeah,
I'm thankful I didn't get into it bigger.
really, especially now when it's laced with fentanyl. But
Yeah, well, even back then,
right,
you know. But I didn't mean to steer us in such a serious note. Um, when you started doing comedy, because, and I guess the reason I wanted to mention that is because you've done really dark stuff. You've done a lot of really dark stuff.
right. You mean in life, like the
Yeah,
dark
just yeah,
coming as a journalist? Yeah, because after I left entertainment journalism because my mom called me and she said from Wisconsin, she said, "Oh my God, I come from the middle of Wisconsin." And
right,
a town of about 35,000, and around it are these teeny tiny farm towns. My mom calls me up and she goes, "Oh my God, the Dairy Princess strangled the homecoming queen over the love
right.
of the local farm boy at the Howard Johnsons." It was like, what a sentence. But I figured I wanted to cover the story because I thought I'd have an
Yeah.
in having come from there. And it was interesting. Actually, it was better if I said I was from New York. I was living in New York at the time. Than I said if I was from Wausau, which is where I
Right.
was raised.
Okay.
Wausau was seen as the big fish in the small pond.
Okay.
So but that was well, that's what really started me
Yeah,
on.
I guess that's why I steered us that way because you did that dark stuff, which again, I'm apologize, I'm bouncing around, but it's your fault because you did so damn much. That I got to cover all this crap.
Yeah, I plead guilty.
Why couldn't you just be, underachiever? Why do I have to cover all? No. But moving on, when you started doing comedy, 5 years
Yeah.
ago or whatever, was there a catalyst with all the stuff you did? Was there something that said you know what? Now I want to try comedy.
Well, what happened was when I finished the Mac Groening project, I was like, well, what can I do that I've not done? And I decided to
What
take.
can I do that I haven't done?
Well,
Yeah.
I did.
Hey, I want to
I
have
did.
you back on the show in a few months. Maybe you have a few more accolades that I have to write down.
No, I was, well, just to give you a real fast example, I had this journalism fellowship to Stanford, and you could take any course on campus for free. And
Right.
so I thought, well, what could I do? I never could do it. And I took human dissection. And
Human dice. Jesus God.
just because I was like, well, I'd never had
You
this
cut
opportunity.
people up. You want to cut people. Jesus God.
And it was gross.
Jenny, I'm, I'm starting to get a little nervous now.
Yeah, you should.
I'm getting a little nervous now. Well, you were going to tell me the catalyst for getting into
Oh, yeah.
comedy.
So
Yeah, if you
anyway,
don't mind, we get off that dissecting people. Get off that.
yeah, so what I did was I took a storytelling class and I told a story about my upbringing, and a friend saw me and he said, you should, which was a big step for me because I didn't like public speaking. And he said, you should do stand-up comedy. I'm in this workshop. And I was like, no, I don't want to do, I have no interest
Okay,
in that.
right.
Because back in the 80s, I used to know a lot of stand-up comics and or comedy writers, and they would always say the harshest form of comedy was stand-up because they were so mean to each other.
Okay,
But he convinced me, and after that, it was like, that, and I did the show, and then it was like, oh, I've got to do this again.
okay.
But
You mentioned I think chase the dragon. Was that
yeah,
your terminology?
yeah, you're always trying to get that high of when, like when you're on stage and it's working,
Yeah.
and you're always trying to get to that again and again. And, especially in the beginning, it doesn't happen that often. And And now, it's still this thing where you tell a joke that kills in one place and then you tell it the same
It
joke and it's
doesn't,
just,
doesn't, yeah.
and you're like, I don't even know when you get to the point where you can figure out why that is.
Well, I'm going to try and throw you a couple here. I know number one, you don't like unicorns. You actually hate unicorns.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Why? Why do I hate I hate them because um to me they're like religion. Like I have
Okay.
friends who
It's okay. It's okay. I'm not real fond of those little bastards
I
either.
hate, well, no, my friends, adults, I'm not talking about kids, they act like they're real. Like my friends like, oh, did you ever have a bad experience with a unicorn? I'm
Yeah,
like,
that's
I'm like, no. I mean, to me, it's like believing in Hello Kitty or God. And
well, and see, I watched your latest and you do. I will mention you're all over. You have Instagram. I think you do TikTok too.
yeah,
I know you have a YouTube channel, Facebook, obviously. But I watched your latest YouTube video, and you do a bit about dating and a dating app that you tried. Do you want to tell the
uh,
people about that? I
oh
thought
yeah.
that was really good.
So yeah, it's about like, so I go like, there are things worse than death,
Yeah,
like dating apps for seniors.
yeah.
I'm aging asexual, and I thought, well, maybe human contact's okay. So I signed up on this site called Never Too Late.
Right. I've
It's for
never heard of it. Never too late.
it's for seniors in hospice.
Oh, okay.
So this guy named Dougie reached out. He gifted me with a portrait of his package. I think.
It would,
I
you
think I
think?
was like, oh my God, was that a melted candle? Or did somebody pour salt on a slug?
Oh God.
But I love a mystery.
Okay, so keep going there. Well, how things
Okay, so
go
I
with
love a
Dougie?
mystery. So last weekend, we had a
Yeah,
dinner date at
yeah,
his bedside. And since I figured the odds of hanky panky were only 50-50,
right.
I only shaved one leg.
Okay,
But I did shave both my nipples.
okay,
And it
and
took
then
a while, but we did hit second base.
okay.
Yeah, I had to hold his hand on my boob because it kept falling into my lap. And I'm like, Dougie, my boobs are not lower than my standards.
Seemed like maybe he's trying to get a second and third.
I don't think he knew where he was.
So, are you still dating? What happened with Dougie? This was last weekend. How are things
Oh,
going?
no. So I felt so good. I thought, oh, Jenny, you're so charitable. Uh,
Okay.
you should write this off your taxes. But the next day, he didn't call me. And I was like, rude. So I called him, and whoever answered the phone told me that Dougie died.
Huh.
Yeah, yeah. And you can imagine how I felt. I was so relieved. I thought that old geezer ghosted me, which he kind of did.
Yeah, I guess. I guess.
So Dougie no more.
Dougie,
Although
no, no.
this is the thing about dating from hospice is you don't have to commit to anybody. There's always somebody else.
Yeah, you can move right on to the next
Yeah.
one. I tried to throw you a couple there. Do you have another one you want to throw at us real quick? Or
Um,
something else you want to throw at the folks?
okay, let me see if so do you ever have problems, yeah, meeting people at work?
Me.
Yeah. Are you married?
No, obviously, I did my due diligence about you. You didn't, because I got fired from my job for telling jokes.
You did?
Yeah.
What was your job?
So
A
you
radio?
think wait a second. Do I have problems meeting friends at work? Yeah, I got problems making friends, you cocksucker. Yeah. Oh, it's a funny little drinking problem I got.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm sorry. I'm just kidding you. I did get fired from my job.
For telling jokes?
Yes, ma'am.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. No, that's how your comedy minute started.
That's
No, I'm
right.
serious. 4.5 years ago, I started your comedy minute.
Oh, how cool. That's great.
Yeah, that's the truth.
That's great.
But I didn't mean to interrupt your bit. You wanted to ask me if I ever had
Oh, I
problems?
know it's just because like because I'm a crime reporter,
Right,
or I have been for years. And
right.
so you talk about having problems meeting people at work,
Yeah,
because the guys I meet are into like, guy stuff like strangulation,
right. They're dead.
suffocation, mutilation, defenestration, all the Asians, and anyone who's not is dead.
Yeah, that's the first thing I thought. They're dead. Oh my God. Well, I'm trying to think. I want to make sure that we cover everything as far as upcoming gigs and what you got going on as far as anything you want to tell the people besides, like if you're working on more dissection, human dissection stuff or whatever you got going on.
I'm just going to tell you one thing about it because it's so gross and disgusting. I was
And this is the place for it. Your comedy minute is the place for gross and disgusting.
I was married at the time. I was at the Stanford Fellowship where I did the dissection class, and
Okay.
um, and I don't want to say anything that is disrespectful to the people who donate their bodies because it's a beautiful thing to do for med
Right,
students.
right. Yeah, sure.
But it was Valentine's Day, and I wanted to send my husband like a little photo or a video. So I took a heart and I held it in my hand and I said, "This Valentine's Day, I give you my heart."
Oh no.
That marriage didn't last.
You, oh, Ginny, oh, Ginny, Ginny, Ginny,
I would be fired from my
Ginny.
job
You
if I had
seem
one.
like a really nice lady. I like you, but if you sent me a picture of you holding a heart, I'm gonna. When you got home, I'd be going.
Well, he did.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. No,
That's all.
hey, listen, like I said, teach his own. If you know who cut, well, but didn't you say Jeffrey Dahmer? Isn't that where?
Well, he's from Wisconsin, which is where
Yeah,
I'm from.
yeah. See,
Yeah.
we're
Well,
tying it all full circle.
actually, for my comedy minute, it kind of relates to Jeffrey Dahmer.
Okay, well, we're gonna get to that. We're gonna get to your comedy minute in a minute. Get to
Okay.
your comedy minute in a minute. Look at that,
It
man. I'm
doesn't,
trying to say,
but
but
how come it's
please,
called the
please,
comedy
hang on,
minute?
hang on, hang on. Make sure we cover everything. I want you to, because I know you have some big shows coming up.
Oh, well, I just want to tell people how to spell my name because everybody else,
Gini.
it's because people come up to me and go, "Jenny Sykes, are you related to Wanda Sykes?"
I'm sorry. Say it again, Ginny.
People have asked me, they go, "Jenny Sykes, are you related to Wanda Sykes?"
Oh,
And
okay.
I'm like, you mean the black multimillionaire gay comedian? I'm like, she spells her name with a Y. I'm with an I.
Yeah.
Sykes with an I.
Ginissikes. Ginny Sykes.
Correct.
Okay. And you do have some big shows coming up if you want to tell the people about those.
Um, well, do you have listeners in LA?
Well, no, what I'm going to do is I will put the links to all of your social media and all your,
Oh,
your homepage and all the stuff you sent me. But, if there's anything, because I hope to get this on the air within a week or two
oh,
that you want
okay.
to mention that people watching it, the few watch it, maybe.
Yeah. Okay, so next weekend I am at it's a theater here named the Dow. That's the Dow, like
Yeah.
TAO
And
comedy.
there's some time travelers. There's people that go back in time and they can watch.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry, Jenny.
All they have to do is actually just go on my follow me on Instagram,
Absolutely.
and
I
then
follow you on Instagram.
and I followed you back.
Wow.
Woohoo.
Yeah, buddy, my day is made.
We're making connections.
You and me were like magic.
We're
You're
networking.
going to tell me to disappear.
Or I'll have
Look,
you disappear.
yeah, well, I tell you what,
I
you
know
are.
people.
Listen, I first and foremost, I'll be serious for 2 seconds. I hope you had a good time. I
Oh,
loved having you
say,
here. You're an amazing, amazing woman.
thanks.
You know, one thing I'll tell you, I can always tell when I'm having fun because I talk more and I'm more engaged. When if you watch some of these, when I'm sitting there quiet, I'm uncomfortable. But you made me feel very comfortable, and I thank you.
And likewise.
I was nervous, but I hope you'll come back and see me. We'll get together in a few months, but it's that time, and you build it up, so I'm excited. Ginny Sikes, your comedy minute. Go ahead.
Does it have to be 1 minute?
No,
No,
Ginny, it can be
I
5 minutes.
know.
Go
I
as long
know.
as you
I
want.
saw. I looked.
Go
Okay.
ahead.
All right. So you know how growing up, like every neighborhood has that house that nobody wants to go near.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like on our block, there was a family whose dad was a police officer
Okay.
who he was a safety officer for kids, and he turned out to be a pedophile.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh.
But that wasn't the house nobody wanted to go to. It was ours. Like if a ball rolled in our yard, they're like, "Fuck that ball!" Like he just that.
Oh
And
my God.
it was just because we were eccentric. But l- so okay. Also, like my parents raised us were kind of crazy. Like they raised us in Wisconsin by choice.
Right.
Um, and as you know, our most famous resident is Jeffrey Dahmer, who
Right.
ate people and kept their heads in the refrigerator.
Yeah.
So we didn't eat people, but we had a head on top of our refrigerator. Well, it was a skull, and it was my dad's. Um, you know,
Oh, God.
it wasn't my dad. It belonged to my dad, right?
Okay.
And
Keep
and
going.
and we had it had always been there, but my parents uh believed in indulging their kids every creative whim, like they were really encouraging.
Okay.
And when I was like 6, my thing was I used to like to go and scrape dead squirrels and birds off the road and bring them down into my basement and try to bring them back to life because I was obsessed with Frankenstein. And actually, it was Herman Munster. Um, I, I digress for 1 second. My mother found a fan letter I wrote and saved it to Herman Munster, and
Fred
I
Gwynn. Was it Fred Gwynn? Is that right?
yeah, but I wrote to Herman Munster,
You
and
wrote to Herman Munster.
I wrote, dear Herman, I am 6 going on 10. You big handsome man, you. And I'm not making that up, which is I don't know how I had that confidence. I don't have that now.
Okay.
But anyway, so here I am in my basement, trying to bring these animals back to life, like Dr. Frankenstein. And
All right.
my dad walked in one day, and he looks around and he goes, "Holy shit!" And he looks around and he goes, "Wow, Ginny, you're showing an aptitude for science." And like he could have given me a chemistry kit, and he gave me and my brother this is like when we we're 5 or 6 or something like that, this human skull, and it wasn't like white or bleached like you would find in the museum. It looked like it had been dug up, like it was brown and crusty, right?
Oh my God.
And the first thing my brother and I did was we stuck it on a stick and we ran outside yelling, "Skeleton, skeleton on a stick." But so you're probably wondering where my dad got it. And for years, I didn't ask or know, because
Right.
it's kind of like I didn't want to know my dad was Jeffrey Dahmer. So but my brother said the skull had come from my grandpa. And what my brother told me was grandpa was in the Ozarks and we never knew him. He died before we were born. And when a little boy, he dug up these bones that he believed were American Indians. And he took them and he kept them in the barn. And then he got scared. And so he buried them one by one until only the skull was left. So, like when I was adult, I asked my dad about that, and I said, and he goes, "No, your grandfather was an optometrist." And he felt optometrists didn't get the respect of medical doctors, so he ordered a medical skeleton. And I found out this year from NPR they were coming from India. So it was an Indian, but it wasn't the right. It's a
Well,
different.
I don't know where this comedy minute's going to end, but we're going to run out
Oh,
of time.
okay. I'll speed it up. So
We're going to
anyway,
run out of time. We only got a minute or so left.
okay, here we go. So anyway, we played with the skull, and my brother and I would fight, right? And one night we had a babysitter, and I was taking a nap with my monkey. And when I woke up, instead of the monkey, their skull was in there. My brother had taken it out and
Right.
put the skull there. And I wasn't afraid, but I thought my brother's a dick. So I screamed my head off. And then
The babysitter came in.
yes. And I don't remember anything about that, but I remember that we had a family meeting and my dad put the skull in the middle of the table and said, "You kids don't know how to respect the head." And then he said he was going to give it away to a university, which he did the next day. And every Christmas, my brother and I would argue about whose fault it was that we lost the skull.
You lost the skull. Okay, Ginny. Woo wee. That's a comedy minute for comedy minutes, I'll tell you.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. Let me stop the recording. Thank you for being here. I'm
Thank
going to
you.
stop the recording so we can spend a minute or two off the air, okay?
Sounds good.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
I had a blast.
Me too.
Although I'm scared of hell. I'm scared of you now. I'm scared of
You
shit.
should be.
Thanks a lot for being here.